Dr. Steven Greene here. I am really happy to have Cheryl DiLanzo with me here today. Cheryl is a noted expert in the field of college admissions. She's helped lots and lots of students get into the college they want to get into. But what I've already learned from her is it's not just getting into the college. There's a lot of prep you got to do beforehand. That's some of the things we're going to talk about today. But why don't you tell us, first of all, welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you very much for having me.
And why don't you just tell us where you come from and why somebody should consider having a professional help them with this process.
Well, I have worked in higher education for over 25 years, and in my role as a faculty member, I have also worked for and with the admissions office and at various institutions. And through that, I have realized that students do not have enough preparation from a professional in order to have their applications and essays and everything done in a better way than it's been done in the past. And I found that there's a need for someone like myself to act as a navigator for families to help them through the application and admissions process.
Because it's not just as simple as filling out an application.
No, it's not. Times have changed. There's so much more involved than when we went to college.
Right, and from what I've heard or what you've told me, there just isn't really help. People are basically figuring this out on their own.
Right. Even in public high schools where they've hired a guidance counselor just to do college advising, which many public high schools have done that. The ratio, as noted, is one guidance counselor for 471 students in the public schools. And an average time spent with a student preparing them for college admissions is 7 minutes.
Now, is that 7 minutes in a year or 7 minutes in their 4 years?
7 minutes total, because generally speaking, the college guidance counselor probably is not going to be meeting with those students until they're a senior in high school, unless
and
students...
it's almost too late.
Exactly. 7 minutes isn't enough, particularly when families are spending $100,000 plus to send their student to college.
If you're lucky these days. Right. Well, look, so these are kind of shocking numbers, and what I think it does is it really gives you the value of why you need somebody who knows what they're doing to be on your side. So let's just get right to it here. Who really needs this support?
Well, what I find is that there are, students are involved in so many activities. Families are very busy. So anybody that has somebody in their family looking to pursue education after high school graduation could use my help. And that's to say, it might not even be to go to college. Let's say there's somebody in the family that wants to do something, but they don't know what. Perhaps I have a client who went to dog grooming school. I had a client who went to hairdressing school. So there are other avenues that people can take besides just going to traditional college, and they might need help navigating that process. But mostly it's for students who want to go to a 4-year institution to get a bachelor's degree.
And your entry point, where would you advise people begin this process, at least with you?
I believe that we need to see at least one standardized test score prior to us meeting. It's very difficult to make any type of an assessment as to which colleges would be best targeted for them without at least one standardized test score.
Like a PSAT or an
PSAT or SAT. A great time to start with me would be in the beginning of the junior year to just have our consultation together, get to know each other so that we can set a plan in motion.
So the bottom line is basically what's on the screen here, which is you're going to help people with all the build up, the lead up, the physical, the activities, because ultimately they got to decide where they want to go.
Exactly. Well, choosing where to apply to college seems to be the hugest stumbling block for most families because there are many parameters that families have. Location of this school, let's say, the size of the school, the climate of the school, the activities or the majors that a school provides. I will do all the research and present families with a list of approximately 20 to 25 schools from which they are to choose 7 that they'll apply to. So using the parameters that the family sets out, we're going to make a list of where they're going to apply.
And this is based on your conversations, their
parameters, absolutely.
Activities you give them to do, research.
And also how, what's the student's academic record? That's going to go in. That's going to play into this. What are their standardized test scores? What courses have they taken? What are their grades?
So it's not as simple as saying I got a 2100 on my SAT, so I want to go to Yale.
No, it's not as simple as that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean it should be, but awesome. So basically, we're coming from a position of collecting information, giving students things to do that are going to drive them through this process. So ultimately, when they do make the applications, their chance of admission is as high as possible.
Right. Our goal is that when a student applies to 7 colleges, they get into 7 out of 7 or 6 out of 7. And so what we do is we set up a process whereby a student would choose one reach school, one safety school, and the rest targeted to their current academic and standardized test scores and the other parameters set out by the family.
And 7 is just lucky number?
7 is our lucky number. I've done some research, and it appears that 7 is the accurate number to use.
Atlantic City and college admissions is 7?
That's it, okay. 7. Bet on 7.
Okay, there we go. All right, so I think we've established the basic objective here.
Yes.
Let's talk about what you actually do.
So so one of the things, besides just helping families select the colleges, we need to really come up with an essay or essays that are going to really blow the socks off the people who are reading these essays in the college admissions offices.
Sure.
And so I help students. I will never write a student essay. However, I will help to brainstorm, edit, re-edit, give tips on how a student can decide whether or not this is a good essay or not, to make sure that when they are submitting their essays, that they truly are passionate, they sound like the student, and they put forth a message that the college admissions readers will appreciate. And this is, I think, a very, very important service.
And I can tell you it's what I do, a little bit overlooked in the admissions process, at least in my experience. Tell me about this resume.
Okay.
What's your thinking here?
I've come to the point over the past 2 years where I believe that having a resume that a student has compiled is a most important aspect. There are things that the applications are going to require students to answer that don't touch upon some of the things that a student may excel at.
Such as?
For example, I have a student who is going to be a theater major, and he has had numerous lead roles, secondary roles in upwards of 40 productions over the course of his high school career, in and out of his own high school. Well, the application doesn't leave room for him to say what roles he played.
It's just saying I was in a play.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So when you put together your personal resume, you are highlighting every best aspect of yourself so that a college admissions person, when they're reading that, can really see how much time you spent on that particular passion of yours. And I think it really does lend itself well, especially to the common application, because there's a place that you can upload a resume if you want to.
Yeah.
I believe we should. So I've told students, going to college and applying to college is like a job. You wouldn't go to a job without a resume.
Absolutely.
And so
agree.
now students are going to be putting together their resume starting about 2 years ago.
Now this seems fairly obvious, but why is this so important?
Well, somebody needs to be reading every application prior to
trained
submission.
eye probably better than a parent.
Well, you know what? Students generally don't want to listen to their parents, and sometimes they don't.
That's a major revelation,
right? Or maybe they think that their parents don't know.
Right.
And
you went to college 30 years ago.
Exactly. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think that somebody needs to read them. I have found numerous errors, and I'm saying these are things that students didn't realize were incorrect. They need to be corrected. Somebody
Can you give a specific example?
For an example, on the application, it might ask if you are a veteran of, a war.
All right.
And students, I'm not a veteran of war. They don't answer the question. Well, you need to answer every single thing on there.
So you have to
it might ask if you're married. Well, I'm not married. I'm 16, 17, 18 years old. I'm not married. Sure. Well, you still have to answer the question.
Interesting. Now, this to me seems like it can be really critical.
Well, certain schools do require an interview. For an example, if your student wishes to attend Penn State Honors, they need to have an interview. And sometimes students just don't have the experience to know how to prepare for that interview.
Or they look good on paper and they can't sell themselves.
Exactly.
Live.
So some of the things we talk about seem obvious to us as adults, but for an example, what to wear on an interview. What to bring for an interview. I have students preparing certain questions that they have typed up and written down so that they can actually ask questions back to the interviewer based on some of the things that are important to them about a particular institution. So some research needs to be done by the student. I always have the student bring their resume with them. So we go through this, we can role play, but I always make sure that students are well prepared for the admissions interview if there is to be one at certain institutions.
And the truth is, even if there isn't, they're going to need that skill at some point anyway.
Of course.
I mean, interpersonal skills.
Of course.
Campus visit. Big thing.
Big thing. What starts to happen with families is they start to visit all these campuses, and sometimes they're visiting 2 a day if they're taking a road trip, let's say, to the Boston area or to the DC area, where they can fit in a bunch of places in a day or in a weekend. Things start to look the same, sound the same, feel the same. So I give some advice on what a student should be doing on those campuses that might not happen regularly. For an example, pick up the college newspaper. Bring that home with you. You'll be able to see in that college newspaper what activities are going on. Do those activities interest you? Sample something in one of their on-campus dining services. See if you see how you feel about that.
Yeah, the cuisine is famous at Rutgers. I can tell you that.
There you go.
It was like a Le Perrier kind of.
Take a lot of pictures with your smartphone. Take some pictures so that you can remember that this is where you saw the clock tower or whatever that thing is, so that when you look back, because applying isn't going to take place that day.
Sure, right. I mean, does it make any sense? Like if we're in Philadelphia and you want to go to UCLA, does it even make sense to apply to a college you haven't visited?
Of course,
I'm sure
does.
It happens.
It happens frequently, and there are mixed. There's mixed research on that.
Right.
Some people say you need to visit everything before you apply, and some say visit it becomes very costly to travel, particularly if you're going to look at UCLA. But I think depending on your major, first of all, and depending on how close you are, second of all, I think you can always visit after the application goes in.
It happens in both directions. I've worked with a lot of students who they love a school, and for whatever reason, then they go to visit it, and it's not really what glitters isn't always gold to them.
Right, of course.
And then there's the diamond in the rough. They go to a school, and all of a sudden, it really stands out to them.
Unfortunately, a lot has to do with your tour guide and the weather and so forth.
I could tell you lots of stories. Let's talk about what people are actually going to get if they engage with what you do. So, first of all, they're going to get an expert in the field.
Yes.
That's important. I can vouch for you there. Stress release. This can be a stressful process.
Oh, you have no idea. It is.
Let's even just the time. How long? You're talking a year plus process here.
We're talking that I generally start with people that are juniors, and we finish. My goal is to finish October of the senior year for a variety of reasons. But what happens is, there's a lot of fighting within the family and getting this stuff out, and the parents are pushing a kid, and a kid is pushing back, and so I'm going to be that outsider who's going to come in, and I'm going to calmly take care of it. The student's going to be accountable to me. I do make them accountable. It has to be the student that does the work. And so what happens is we're going to have less stress, less anxiety. Inevitably, students tell me all the time they don't understand how people could go through this process without someone like myself assisting them.
As you say here, personal navigator.
Exactly.
Do you let me see what we got here. When do you consider your job is done? Is it when they get accepted? Obviously your job is to grease the skids here.
Right.
And your expertise in the field, it's beyond just saying, hey, by this date do this, by this date do this, because there's a lot of specialty information. Is it done when they get accepted? Is it done?
I think my job is finished when the student has deposited at a particular institution.
There's no turning back.
And there's no turning back, and
Okay.
that's that. And here we are. It's the beginning of May, so today is deposit day, right?
Today is deposit
It just
day.
happens to be that as we're doing this.
That's why
today.
we're doing it today.
But
we're not doing it because of the Russian Revolution.
That's right.
So,
but you think so I consider my process not completed till the deposits are made, because sometimes families will ask me, they're between two colleges. I get that call all the time. They've been accepted to all seven,
because
and then they're
that begs
between
another
two.
question. We're
Right.
going for 7. What if you get into all 7? Then you got a whole nother level.
How wonderful
of decision.
is that?
Well, it's a good problem to have, but it creates a whole nother level of decision.
It does.
Then you may go back and revisit.
You may have to revisit. You may. I encourage families to go to accepted student days. I think those are awesome days to visit campuses.
Mm-hmm.
They're very excited to have students there, and their goal at the college is to translate an accepted student into a deposited student. So they're going to do everything they can to make your day amazing. So those are some things that could help to change your mind.
So let's start to wrap this up a little bit. Let's talk about your actual process. And this is a little bit like tutoring,
right,
in the sense that we need to know where you are now compared to where you want to be soon or later. So you begin with some sort of assessment.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
So what I do is, believe it or not, there are many students who have never visited a college campus, for whatever reason. And so I go through a very short 4-question assessment that the student does. It's very easy. It talks about how they picture themselves on a college campus, what they picture themselves doing on a weekend. Because if you're in a city school, a sports type school, a rural school, all those things could be different. So we talk about that. And we talk about the goals of the student. Where do they see themselves in 4 years? Or what are their passions now that they might be able to translate into a college major?
I can tell you, and let's keep this to the point, but I work with lots of kids, and I say, what do you want to study in college? Including my own children. And the answer is, it's not that common. There's a clear elucidation.
I think that's fine.
Which I think is fine, because part of the college experience is that discovery. But does that play into the admissions piece of it all? Like, in other words, if I had a student, or you had a student who really was unclear what they wanted to do, are they better off at a liberal arts college, at a big university that has lots of options? I'm not really sure. So we move into here. So step one is
I meet with every family for free. We do some talking.
Good.
Free is excellent. I give them a lot of information that they can take home and look at, so to get them started. And so for free, we get together, and then they decide if we're going to proceed.
So here's a brief idea of what goes on here. So we talk about your plan. You ask them the questions. You give them a list of things they should be doing. There's a lot of this is timely. You can't turn the clock back. I know one of the things you suggest to people is potentially, say, taking a college course in the summer.
I do.
So by the time you're a senior in high school, October of your senior year, you can't go back and do it again. So let's ideal entry point.
Ideal entry point
for the people listening out there today.
The perfect person is a junior in high school.
Okay, so that gives you enough time to do what you need to do.
Exactly.
Enough time for them to do what they need to do.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Okay, so how do we reach Cheryl DiLanzo? Cheryl DiLanzo's company, I may have neglected to say this. Is it ACE or ACE?
It's ACE.
ACE, that's what I thought. Okay.
Advising, Collaboration, Excellence.
Beautiful. There we go. So we got ACE College Advising, and 484-802-8500. There's all the ways you can reach Cheryl, and if you want to get a hold of me, I can refer you to her as well. Cheryl, thank you. This has been really good. I learn a lot every time I speak to you. Is there anything you want to say in closing? Wrap up?
Good luck to all the students out there.
Awesome. So listen, Steve Greene here. Thank you for listening. This is an important topic, whether you got a 3rd grader, 5th grader, 9th grader, because eventually it's going to come. And if you got nothing else out today, the idea you need to plan, you need to have a plan, and executing the plan is what's going to get you the most probability of high success. It's great news that there are professionals out there that handle this and handle it very, very well, even in a very changing environment.
Absolutely.
We didn't even talk about that, having to keep up with all that's part of the anxiety.
Right.
What we know today may not be true in 2 years. So I would encourage you, if this is the window you're in, reach out to Cheryl, and we'll go from there. So thank you again, and see you next time.